Well, hello, everyone. This is Meredith Nagel from the Legacy Legal Team and Concierge Title. Today's Lunch and Learn is going to be on the issue of solar panels in your real estate transactions. And as you see there, the subtitle of this presentation is really not so sunny. Because if you've been involved in one of these, you're going to find that there are some hiccups in the road that we need to address, and some issues that arise that cause confusion. And so, our hope here today is to go ahead and give you the lay of the land, answer any questions you might have. We also have a checklist for you to use if you have a solar panel transaction. Solar panels are involved in your sale, and that kind of sends you down a little decision tree so that you can make sure that you're touching all your bases. So, without further ado, let us go. Please don't be shy about jumping in and unmuting yourself and asking questions as we go. If there's something that I'm saying that you don't understand, I'm certain it's my fault. And there's probably other people that I've been unclear that also don't understand what I'm saying. So please shout out any questions that you might have as we go along. All right, here we go. So, solar panels have become a big issue in Florida. As you see here, we've been consistently clocking at number 2 in the United States since 2019 because we have so many sunny days per year. Another factor that we have, unfortunately, in our state is a lot of folks who are aging. And statistics and reality for all of us show that as our customers, clients age, they become more and more susceptible to sales pitches and some making some decisions that perhaps are not in their best interest that they wouldn't have made in younger years. So, you put those two factors together, and you can see where in Florida, there's a lot of solar panels that are being sold. Generally, what they promise is that you will have a very small, and they sometimes promise a non-existent utility bill. There's also some promises that are made that you can generate so much solar power that the utility company will actually pay you. So these are kind of the pitches that are made when these solar panels, when the guys come and knocking on the door. I saw a statistic that I did not include here that well over 75% of solar panels are sold in those types of direct sale situations. So it's not people calling up and saying, hey, I want solar panels. 3 out of 4 transactions are somebody's knocked on a door and convinced the owner that it's a good idea. So let's talk about the first way that you have solar panels on the house, which is solar panel ownership. The price range here is huge because it depends on the size of the house. But generally speaking, the solar panel folks tell us that it's going to be a minimum of around $16,000 to $40,000. The cost of solar panels have been rising recently, just like the cost of everything else. Some part has been because of tariffs, which we understand is a changing situation. But just in general, the $16,000 to $40,000 range, expect that you can see higher numbers on larger homes. And that 16 to 40,000 is the actual cost of the unit itself. That does not include the financing costs. Generally, we see financing in the range of 6 to 12% interest. And we typically see these over 30 years. So you can imagine that a 70-year-old person buying a 30-year solar system is probably not in their best interest, as an example of somehow people being taken advantage of. And these are the things we see. The solar lobby tells us that on average, a finance system will take 14 years to pay off. And we're seeing the average length of home ownership right now being around 11 years, according to the Realtor Association. So as you can see, for most people, they're not going to own the home long enough to recoup the cost of the system itself. Now, these numbers here do not include hidden costs for repair and maintenance. I will tell you anecdotally that when we see these systems in transactions, frequently Unbeknownst to the homeowner, the system is not performing at peak output. It needs maintenance and it needs repair. Many of the ownership types of contracts do not include repair and maintenance in the contract. The other kind of hidden problem there is that even when there are warranties that are provided, according to the Department of Consumer Affairs in Florida, a lot of warranty claims are not met because the solar company goes out of business before the solar panels are paid for. So you see that there's a high cost. The financing cost is big. Homeownership length may not be long enough to pay them off. And then that doesn't account for repair and maintenance, which can get very expensive. Another way that these solar panels are going to come up on your home. So there, we just talked about the one bucket, which is the solar panels are actually owned, even if money is owed on them under their financing agreement. The other way you'll see these solar panels on the home is through either a power purchase agreement or a lease. In both of these situations, the power purchase agreement or the lease, the owner does not own the panels. So a power purchase agreement is where an owner has signed an agreement with a third party and has agreed that the third party can put the solar panels they own on their roof. And in exchange for that, they will pay a set amount of utility bill over the course of the agreement. And that's always promised to be less than what their average utility bill is. So in that situation, the owner's never going to own the panels. Basically, just imagine it as power owner, solar panel owner, am going to take the place of the utility company. I'm going to put my own solar panels on your house, and then I will charge you less for this than you would pay for a utility bill. That's called a power purchase agreement. The other way is through a lease. Some of these leases provide that you own the solar power panels at the end of the lease. Some of them say you do not. And in fact, you have to pay to have them removed and sent back to the solar power company that put them on there. And some of these leases are for very long term. They provide for a set amount of utility as the lease payment. And then they typically have an escalation clause year over year through the terms of the lease. So once more, we have the power purchase agreement where the company says, I'm going to put my panels on your house. I'm going to generate power and you're going to charge me for that. That's a power purchase agreement. And then the lease is where you're not owning the system, you are renting the system. You at least have a rental interest in it. It's different than your power purchase agreement where you have no rights to it. But again, those leases can have very concerning terms. They raise over the cost, over the length of the lease, and frequently require at the end of the lease, not only do you not own the panels, but then you have to pay to have the panels removed and sent back to the company. And some of these lease agreements are for very long term. So here's what happens at closing. So when you go to list your property and you see those solar panels and you think to yourself, what's going to happen at closing? Here's what happens. First of all, if the solar panels are actually purchased and they have financed that purchase through that solar company or any other third party, but typically it's the solar company, that solar panel company will file a UCC lien. That UCC lien becomes a title problem in the same way a mortgage is or a judgment. It is something that has to be paid off before closing. Importantly, if there is no lien, it is not a title problem. Okay? So you need to understand that the title company's assistance on these files is going to be very, very limited. The title company cannot explain the contract to the seller. Typically, the seller has very little idea what they purchased. They can't explain what the buyer's rights are. They can't negotiate the sale price or negotiate the payoffs or do any of those things. All they can do is reach out to the solar company, get from the solar company a payoff in the same way they would if they were getting a payoff for a mortgage or a lien, and then collect that payoff on the settlement statement. That's the limited thing that the title company can do. So, what's going to happen? What's going to fall on you guys? Well, here's what's going to fall on y'all. And here's where you guys always have to be careful because, per usual, your customers are going to try to force you to do legal work, provide legal assistance, and understanding documents that can get you in hot water. So, if it's not a payoff lien, what are you going to have to do? Well, first of all, you need to find out, is there a lease? Is there a power purchase agreement? And what is the payoff for that? If nobody can afford the payoffs, can these be transferred? In other words, can the lease be transferred from the seller to the buyer? Sometimes you'll call thinking you're helpful. We actually had this happen in a file. Spoke to a customer service representative. Customer service representatives tells the seller, "Oh yeah, no problem. It could be transferred to the buyer." Transaction closes. Nothing is, no further happenings are on the file. And then the buyer learns that, oh yeah, it can be transferred, but they got to pay a $25,000 transfer fee. As you can imagine, paper was flying, realtors were being blamed. That's no fun. So, you can't rely on what somebody tells you on the telephone. You actually need to have somebody look at these agreements and find out what they are. So, do they require a payoff? Some of them will say, if you sell your house, you immediately owe us the remainder of your lease term, just like you would owe it as a payoff. You immediately owe us the remainder of your PPA term. So is that going to happen? And then if they can be transferred, do they need to examine the buyer's credit? Is there going to be a transfer service agreement? Also, especially if you're representing the buyer, what are the maintenance issues going to be? A lot of these contracts have some maintenance provisions, whether they're paying an extra amount every month or there is a set fee when maintenance is required. And in some of these leases, those maintenance promises do not transfer to the new buyer. And system maintenance for these panels can be expensive. So this is what's going to happen at closing. Now, we're not even talking about the desirability of the solar panels to the buyer and all of that. So you can imagine we have a file that I spoke to the seller about. She's got a $40,000 payoff on her solar panels. Now, her agent is telling her, I cannot get $40,000 more for your home based on the value of these solar panels. So, she's going to have very little gain on the sale of her house, much less than she was expecting, because she doesn't have any options. They'll sue her under the contract and long story, but it's an issue. So these are the issues need to be thinking about. What's there going to be a payoff? If it is an owned system, is there a payoff that requires it be paid off at closing? Yes, there will be in the lien released. If not, is there a lien? Does a lien have the escalation clause? The lease or the power purchase agreement? Do they have escalation clauses? Can they be transferred? And if they can be transferred, under what circumstances? And then also you need to prepare, if you're representing the buyer, they need to make some phone calls and get an idea about the cost of maintenance of these solar cells as time goes along. So here's some other problems that we see at closing. Some insurers are no longer insuring homes with solar panels, or they're charging more. Why is that? It's because we live in Hurricane Alley. If you've ever had a solar system on your own home, or you've had a friend that does, they will tell you that it frequently causes problems with the roof when they're installed. It increases the likelihood of leaks. Y'all know how hard it is to buy insurance as it is. So if you're representing a buyer that's interested in one of these homes, they need to reach out and find out what the impact is going to be on the insurance. What we just talked about, does the sale price include the solar value? So in my scenario where the seller is going to have to pay off these solar panels at closing, the buyer is going to get the benefit of the reduced utility payments going forward as long as the solar system is working, but it will have been paid for by the seller. Well, that should have some monetary value, but my guess is that is difficult for you in the sales arena to both convince the buyer as the seller, help the seller understand that, and as the buyer to convince the buyer of that value and exactly what that is. So again, you have problems where people are the net that they think that they can use to buy their new home is going to be substantially reduced by the solar panel, and you can't increase the value of the home. Is it operational? So if you represent a buyer, you need to order an inspection of the solar system in the same way that you would for the pool or the sewer or anything else. As I told you earlier, according to the DCF, Department of Consumer Services in Florida, many solar systems, even if they're operational, are not at full capacity. And many of them, in fact, aren't operational at all. They're just sitting on somebody's roof and they're making payments and also paying Duke Energy. Have there been any complaints against the company? So you can find out as the buyer who is the company that provided these solar panels, and you can actually check with the Department of Consumer Services, and they can let you know if that has been. Oh, I hope everybody's okay. They can let you know if that has been a company that has had a lot of problems, a lot of complaints, failing to, fulfill maintenance obligations and things like that. So here's your problem. This is a legal trap for you guys. A lot of buyers do not have the money to hire a lawyer, and a lot of sellers don't want to spend the money to hire a lawyer. So they're trying to figure this stuff out on their own. I don't want to get you guys in a situation where you're in trouble trying to figure out these solar panel contracts. I would prepare your parties to say, hey, you're going to need to hire a lawyer to look at these agreements and get something in writing that you have told them that. If they don't want to follow your advice, if they want to try to just call the call center in Burma and figure it out on their own, there's nothing you can do to, protect them from being dumb. But I don't want you to get in trouble. So please, please, please make sure that you get it in writing, that you have advised them to speak to a lawyer about what these agreements actually say and what's going to happen, seller, buyer, after closing.
Meredith, can I ask something real quick?
Yes, please do.
So when we do have a listing or our buyer is looking at a house with the solar panels, one of the statements I usually make is, it has solar panels. You might be able to transfer it into your name, but that would be a credit check. Or we can have the seller pay it off at closing. Is that wrong?
As a general statement, it's not wrong, but it does not account for all situations. So, number one, not all of them are transferable, even if someone does have good credit. Some of them absolutely require, like a due on sale clause in a mortgage, they actually require that they be paid off by the seller. And the buyer then has to enter a new contract with the new guys. And of course, those will be on higher energy terms. So, as a general statement, it's not wrong, it's just not complete. So, you need to finish your general statement by, and we'll find more if we do go under contract and we get the documents during the due diligence period, and we'll figure it out. That's kind of how I would finish that statement. And the same thing when you're representing the seller, have them take the time, hire a lawyer, take the time, figure out what they have so that it can be properly disclosed to the buyer, at the time of listing, or as, the transaction goes along.
Thank you.
Oh, for sure. Any other questions? Okay, so here's a checklist for you guys. When you
There's some
see,
questions in the chat, Ms. Nagel.
go ahead. What's the question, Val?
If the homeowner has filed bankruptcy, I have another option to eliminate the UCC one without the homeowner having to pay it off.
Right. So just like a mortgage on a house can't be bankrupted, meaning you can get out of the financial obligation to pay for your house, but the bank still can come take it away. Similarly, on solar panels, if you file bankruptcy, it can get you out of the financial obligation under the solar panels, just like all your others, assuming that you qualify for Chapter 7 and all that. But I'm assuming that's the question. But they're still going to have the right to come and take the panels off, and they can do that at any time.
Let me clarify what I'm saying about this, because I'm a bankruptcy lawyer and I spent the last year trying to figure this out for homeowners, my clients that were stuck with these liens. So what I have done is I've gone into the bankruptcy court. If you read the actual purchase and security agreement, the language specifically says the lien does not attach to the home. It is strictly a lien as a purchase money security interest on the solar equipment only. However, it goes on to state that the homeowner allows the lender to file a UCC1, which oversecures their claim, okay, which does create the cloud on title. So what I do is I go into bankruptcy court, assuming they file bankruptcy. I do an adversary proceeding. It's a complaint to determine the extent and validity of the lien. And I get a court order saying the lien is only on the solar equipment only and it doesn't extend to the home. When I get that judgment, that allowed my client to go forward with a title closing without having to pay off the lien. So that's the
Yeah, of
strategy.
course. If we got a court order recognizing that the UCC1 was an over security and should not actually
Correct.
attach to the property, then we don't have to pay it off.
Correct.
And that's a good option for the few people who do qualify for bankruptcy. And there's like
And I'm
I
talking
would
about people.
recommend on
A lot of people have already filed bankruptcy before they go to or before they go to sell, and it's only at closing that they realize that they still have this obligation. Do you see what I'm
yeah, a
saying?
lot of people
So,
think it's gone, quote unquote, gone
correct,
away. Yeah.
correct.
So Dawn, I would put your contact information, please, in the chat for any of our realtors who need a bankruptcy referral for their real estate clients. I think that would be helpful. Any other questions, Val, in the chat that we need to address?
Do you advise homeowners on how to get rid of their solar panels?
So here's the thing. These, as Don will shake his head yes and tell you, these contracts are what I would call predatory, meaning they're generally very, very solar panel friendly. They have a lot of language in them that is not helpful to your seller, makes it difficult to avoid the contractual obligations. Like any other potential creditor, if they can be convinced it's best in their best interest to take a lesser payoff than what they are looking for, that negotiation can happen and negotiation can be successful. The time to do it, though, is not when the closing has happened and the title company has requested a payoff. Because if they know that a closing has happened, they know that they have you by the you know what's and are much less likely to negotiate. So if you're representing a seller and they've got a solar panel issue and they call and they find out this payoff is big, I would highly recommend that they get with a lawyer and try to get that amount negotiated down before it goes to closing. Because as with any other creditor, once you reach out for a payoff, they know a sale is going to happen, and then they're not going to agree to anything until they see a settlement statement. And if they see there's enough money to pay them, they're not going to be motivated to reduce the debt, right? They don't care how much the seller is going to take home. And again, this is lawyer work, not work that y'all should be doing, but it is an important discussion to have with your seller at the outset. Now, they can call and get their own payoffs of the loan amount, just like they can get a mortgage payoff, and they should do that. When you go to talk to them about the listing, and some of them might be shocked at just how predatory the terms of these agreements are and how much they still owe. So yes, that can happen under the right circumstances, but don't wait until closing when they know that the house is going to sell. Any other questions, Val? It's good that you read them out so that people are watching the recording can see the question, hear the question.
No, ma'am. That's it for now.
Okay, so first, ask the question, what do the solar panels power? A lot of the older systems you see are just for, pools that may or may not work well. So find out, obviously, what do the solar panels power? How old are they? Are they in working condition? And again, as I said earlier from the Department of Consumer Services, many of these systems appear to be in working condition, but they're actually have various states of disrepair. And you need to find that out to make sure they're working at maximum capacity, because that's going to be an issue at inspection. What kind of arrangement do you have? Is it an owned system? Is it a leased system? Or is it a power purchase agreement? Is it transferable? Is there a lien or a contract payoff going to be required? What can they anticipate for the monthly costs for maintenance and repair? Because again, frequently there is a separate contract for those. And when you represent your buyer, what are the insurance costs going to be? I've given you my cell phone number here. We've also in the chat put my number and the email address if you want a copy of our checklist or this PowerPoint. Does anybody else have any more questions? Questions like Dawn's are really the way to get all these issues fleshed out. And I
Hi,
will
Meredith.
say, yes, Marisol, how are you?
Yes, hi. I really wanted to take this lunch and learn because I have solar panels in my home. I just wrote it out on the chat. I hate them so much because I pay $224 just for the loan. And then on top of that, like $30 for Duke. But there have been times, like when I bought the house, that they weren't even operational. So I was paying upwards of $500 for electricity. I have no contact with the company that serviced them. I have no maintenance. I have absolutely nothing. The company that put them that installed them sold the loan to some other servicer that gives me no information, no customer service. And I really would like to not have them because right now I owe more on them than I owe on my car, which is so stupid. It was like a $40,000 loan, and I accepted it in 2022 because it was the only way to get the house that I wanted. But I don't know. I would like to, like, I'm willing to consult with a lawyer to see if I can get out of this. Like, 'cause I don't mind having to pay to get rid of them because I just hate them so much. So I wanted to know if this is something that you do, if there are even lawyers that are specialized in solar panels or what.
I don't know. Don has done some solar panel work in the bankruptcy context. Whether he can be retained outside of bankruptcy, I would reach out to him and find out. He might know someone. I can tell you that as a general statement, the servicers of these loans are kind of like the bottom feeders of the of the industry. If you think Shell Point is hard to deal with from the residential side, as I said, a lot of these contracts are extremely predatory. They've got every possible protection for the lender and not the homeowner. And I think, Marisol, what you're seeing and what kind of happened to you is the result of not as many properties having the solar panels when you went to closing. What we're seeing now is realtors, buyers, and sellers being much more astute and really drilling down on these issues prior to closings. And we're seeing closings fall apart because of it, which really we'd rather have a closing fall apart than a buyer be unhappy and angry and hate their solar panels. So it's good that it's coming to everyone's attention, but it is something that we all need to pay attention to. I just had just kind of an anecdotal thing. I just had a friend of mine that was looking at a beautiful $850,000 home, and she passed it by for the one down the street because the one down the street didn't have the solar panels. And she didn't want to deal with the roofing problems, the maintenance problems, all of the other problems that are sometimes associated with the solar units. So, I certainly wouldn't put them in my home based on what I know about transferability of real property. I might, if I had big property, I might put some on the ground. If I had 5 acres or something like that, I'm a big proponent of it as a concept. But what we see happening in the real estate industry is causing a problem. People are really kind of doing it. I'm not really into this, and it's just so hard. It would seem to me to be very hard as the seller's agent to uh, be able to convince the buyer that somehow this house is worth another $30,000 because they're going to get a paid off solar system. I think that would be a very, very hard sell. Yes, Jeannie, I will be very glad to meet with your folks and walk them through their contract. And Jeannie's asking me, can I be retained to consult with a property owner? Yes, I would be glad to be retained to speak to your buyers or sellers to help them understand the agreements that are at issue. What kind of agreement is it? What are the requirements? Yes, we would be glad to do that work. Let me see if I have any other questions.
Meredith,
Yes.
when it comes to the solar panels and your roof, 9 times out of 10, removal causes damage.
Absolutely.
What happens with your insurance and the warranty on the solar? So if you leave it and there's damage, because solar panels come with a warranty, but right.
Yeah, the warranty is only so good as the solar panel's ability to back it up, and go and look on the Department of Consumer Services page, and you're going to see that there's been a lot of warranty problems. It also voids your roof warranty. And for that, that's the reason why Gigi earlier in the presentation, I spoke about buyers reaching out to insurers and see what the impact on the ability to get insurance is going to be. Insurance companies hate solar panels, especially here in Hurricane Valley, right? Or Hurricane Alley, because a bad storm can do a lot of damage to the panels, and that almost always results in damage to the roof. And then the roofer saying, my warranty's gone. Solar panels will have language that excludes damage to the roof. And so your owner's can be in a bad pickle. That's why buyers don't like them.
Okay,
So all I
thank
can
you.
tell you is if you represent a seller, you need to prepare them this is be my advice, Gigi, as you represent the seller, help them understand, not you explaining, but get legal counsel to understand the nature of their agreement. They might even be, if it's a big high number, they may be somebody that bankruptcy can make sense for. And we've got a good referral. Luckily, he showed up today. I don't even know Don, but I'm glad he showed up today, and it's a good referral source. So, get with your seller, help them understand what they're looking at, how it's going to impact the saleability. And then get with the buyer when you represent the buyer and make sure they know. Again, they need to talk to a lawyer to explain what they're getting into, speak to the insurance company, because I don't have to tell y'all, we've all been in enough transactions to know that anything goes wrong, the realtor gets blamed. That's why I want you to have this writing where you disclose to them to consult with an attorney about what the force and the impact of the agreement. Yeah, someone who's having seller had problem. Evelyn said she had a problem selling her house with solar panels. Are insurance companies better with solar on the ground? Of course, of course, of course, of course. Solar on the ground has, not the same impact, very little impact, except at the connection points for what happens on the home. I've never heard of anyone having a problem with insurance and solar panels that are put on the ground. It could be, but I've not heard of them, and it certainly shouldn't be the concern for the buyer. And Dawn, would you put your information again, please, once more in the chat? Any other questions? Anybody just want to shout something out?
Hi everyone. I do have a quick question. Um, so I have a seller right now, and I sent them to legal aid last week because I'm like, I really don't know. I didn't want to advise any further with the solar panels. But a quick rundown, because if this is something either you or Don can help, I would love to refer my seller to you all. So she owns the home. She recently did a quick claim deed with her daughter like a year ago. So her daughter's partial owner as well. Her daughter, like you were speaking earlier, someone knocked on the door and sold the solar panels, and her daughter agreed and signed this. It's a lease agreement for the solar panels. And what we're dealing with now is she didn't. She said they didn't explain it to her that way. So now we're trying to sell the house, and the solar panels have become an issue, and they put the UCC lien on. The title company let us know. but the solar panel company refuses to give a payoff amount because the panels, it is past due. So they said they have to pay the past due to give a payoff amount. So now they had the money to pay the payoff amount. And when they called last week, the solar panel company said, okay, well, we sent your account to collection, so we don't have it anymore. And they won't give any information. So now we're all just, sort of stuck in the place, stagnant. We don't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't, like you were saying earlier, I don't want to be liable for anything because I honestly don't know what's the best route for them to take. So are you someone I can refer them to, or Dawn? I don't know what to really
Well, if they qualify for legal aid, they may qualify for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy that will allow them to discharge some or all of the debt and keep the house. So, I would reach out to Dawn to see if they might be candidates. I hear potential defenses to the contract, and not both of them signed it. And the sad thing of, I will say as a general matter, the sad thing of I didn't know what I was signing is not a defense in the law. You're supposed to read what you sign. And if you don't understand it, you're supposed to have a lawyer explain it to you. That is a practical reality, though. Most of these people rely on what they're being told by the salesman, and don't have the ability or capacity to understand the legal mumbo jumbo, which includes language that says something like, doesn't matter what they told you at the door. The only thing that matters is what's in the contract. So, yeah, Jody also. So I would say reach out to Dawn and see if they might be. I don't know if they can afford a lawyer to help them try to negotiate themselves out of the bag that they're in. Maybe they qualify for bankruptcy, and that might be a solution for them. Jody made a good point here. If you're going to try to assume the loan, if it is a assumable loan that the lender on the solar panels will allow, they're likely going to require that they approve the buyer as a borrower, and that will be a hard credit pull that for some of your buyers who are on the edge could then all of a sudden make them give them problems with their loan. So you can see there's a lot of potential quicksand for everybody in these transactions. I don't want you to run from them as a listing, but I do want you to be knowledgeable, and I want you to make sure you get the proper writing, guys, on both sides of the transaction, representing a buyer or seller. We need an email specifically advising them that you cannot provide legal advice as to what these contracts mean, and that they must consult with a lawyer. And please do not rely on what someone at a call center says, whatever they say when they answer the phone. First of all, that statement that those Don remembers this from the bad old days from mortgage, when everybody's mortgage was failing. They're not recording the phone calls in a way that protects you as to what representation that they made. So there's, calling somebody at a call center is basically worthless, maybe to get a payoff. Also, you could, if you're having problems getting a payoff, sometimes the title company is more successful in getting those. But again, once they know that a sale is at issue, it becomes even more difficult. And you're probably going to want extra time for inspections, because you want to make sure that all your other systems are in good condition before you get the solar panels inspected. That's got to happen so that you can figure out, are they working? And if not, you're going to have to figure out what repair costs are going to be. And I can tell you those folks are expensive. The inspectors for solar systems are expensive. And like a lot of septic inspectors, don't be surprised if they find something that has to be fixed, and the fix, it might not be that inexpensive. So, it's just something that you've got to add into why you guys, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right, Gigi? It's the professionals that, it's the professionals. This is how you differentiate yourself from everybody else, that you know how to handle these things when they come up.
One of my favorite women in the whole world is a broker in Tally, and her thing for everybody is be the source of the source.
That's
We
right.
are realtors, we have our business partners, and we are the source of the source. This is a new agent, by the way, Meredith. She'll be working with We Can Do It Realty. So you are her first Zoom call.
Good to see you.
Webinar.
And that's something you're going to hear me say all the time. Have a writing that proves that you referred out on these issues. You are not allowed to tell them what a what a solar panel lease, power purchase agreement, or contract. And then the last thing I want to close on, this is just as it is. When these things first came out, one of the ways they were being sold and people were doing okay is they were getting what we call a net credit on their power bill. So some people were producing so much power that they were selling it back to Duke Energy. And so they would actually get paid at the end of the month. Well, don't you know that our energy companies in 2018 used the power of their lobby to go to legislature and say, hey, we know like this, we got to change this. So the calculation for a credit was changed in a way that really hurt the consumer in 2018. So again, where it was even being somewhat helpful there, it's less helpful now. So I guess, I don't want to be have a rainy forecast on solar panels, but I will tell you that pretty much when people see them in a real estate transaction at this point, everybody just kind of clenches up. So when you take that listing, be prepared. And if your buyer wants the property, make sure that they know these checklist items that we talked about. Refer out to discuss with the professionals everything we talk about, because I promise you, if you don't and there is an issue, they are going to blame you. All right. Any more questions? You guys are great. If you need this recording, let Val know. If you need our checklist, let Val know. If you need me, there's my cell phone. As always, it doesn't matter whether you're closing with me or not. I'm very glad to help you stay out of trouble and keep your people out of trouble. And Gigi's shaking her head because she knows I've helped her in many transactions that I had nothing to do with the transaction.
But she is our lawyer.
But I love, and I don't charge for those kind of things. I would charge to consult with your client and review a contract, but to answer your questions and give you proper direction, I'm glad to help. So good luck, everybody. I'm so glad, Dawn, that you showed up. I had kind of a co-presenter that really provided value and I didn't know. So thanks a lot. And Val, make sure that you take down Dawn's information. It might be fun to have a Zoom lunch and learn later in the year about some of the real estate issues that are impacting clients in a bankruptcy transaction. It is not true you cannot sell property out of a bankruptcy. If you've got a good bankruptcy attorney, you can get it done. So that might be an interesting topic for us coming up later.
Does Danielle need to put her email there to get this link? Video?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Hi, Val.
Hi, Gigi.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. We're going to leave it open. We're going to leave it open just for a minute so everybody can drop their email addresses in. But thank you for coming. I hope this has been of value to you all. Do a good job. I know y'all do. Don't forget, as hard as it seems, you are taking part in what is for most people the most significant thing they have happening in their life at that time. And that is buying a home. That is God's work. Remind yourself of that when you're frustrated. You are doing God's work in the world. Never forget. It doesn't feel like it always. But to those people, that's the biggest thing they have going on in their life. And you have a privilege to be able to be in people's lives during that time. So don't forget that. You're important. Thanks so much for being here.